It's Gary Parrish. Welcome to the CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting, dodo birds, and leaky black. Matt Norlander is here with me, and we're going to be in front of these cameras for the next hour talking college basketball now that the 2024 men's Final Four is set. National semifinals Saturday over in Arizona. Game 1, Purdue, NC State. Game 2, UConn, Alabama. The Final Four features 2 number 1 seeds, a number 4 seed, and a number 11 seed. Dead leg. Let's just start with the obvious. On a scale of 1 to, let's call it 10, how would you rate what we got at this Final Four down in Glendale?
1 to 10, GP. I'd go, well, before I give you that exact, I'm going to go to the decimal here. You've got a powerhouse UConn trying to do something truly historic. You've got a program known for its football dominance that's here on the basketball stage for the first time in school history. You've got a supernova playing center, DJ Burns, who is taking over this tournament and become a national sports icon. And you've got the redemptive arc of Purdue. So all things considered, I'm gonna give you an 8.2. 1 to 10, 8.2 is my level of excitement and intrigue for this Final Four. And I say that knowing full well, and we'll get to talking about the matchups and picking them later in the show. I say that knowing full well that we enter into this Final Four with a couple of spreads on these games, not expected to be single possessions, but that doesn't slow me from having a lot of excitement, a lot of intrigue over what's on the table with these two matchups.
Yeah, I would go in that 7-8 range as well. Like, the Final Four isn't just Saturday. You know, Monday counts as the Final Four as well. And though I am fearful that the national semifinals could get a little lopsided, and we'll discuss those in a moment, the idea that now we are likely to have a championship game between Purdue and UConn makes it potentially an excellent Final Four, because though Houston was also always a part of this conversation, and we shouldn't use revisionist history, it is not crystal clear that Purdue and UConn have been the best 2 teams in the country all season. It is crystal clear that Purdue, UConn, and Houston have been the top 3 teams this season in some order, and that was almost always true. And the only difference between Houston and Purdue and UConn is that Purdue and UConn obviously made the Final Four. Houston didn't, but Houston lost its best player, in a Sweet 16 game. And I genuinely believe, if not for that, Houston would also be a 1 seed in the Final Four. But as it is, we get Purdue, UConn both making it, heavy favorites in the national semifinals. And a week from today, we could be getting ready to watch Zach Edey against Donovan Clingan, Purdue against UConn, 2 teams that were ranked number 1 in the AP poll for 12 of the 20 weeks that we had an AP poll this season. Again, more than half of the weeks we had an AP poll, number 1 was either UConn or Purdue. And now it seems likely that we're going to watch them play for a national championship a week from today.
Yes, we are. And you know what? It would have been nice to have Houston here. Really, really good team, deserving of it. But the story, I think, would you agree, Parrish, getting DJ Burns and NC State here the way that school got here as an 11 seed from the ACC, he's become this darling of the tournament. It's actually Houston-Purdue would have been a closer matchup going in. It would have been maybe a more compelling matchup, but the storyline and the actual national appeal, would you agree with me that Burns and what he's become and with NC State actually has brings more intrigue to the Final Four than Houston might have? Because for as good as Jamal Shead is, and he's amazing, I voted him as a first-team All-American, he did not have, despite being an awesome player, this is what the tournament does, he just didn't have the same kind of national profile as what DJ Burns and NC State have done.
Yeah, I think there's probably some truth to that. Like, from a pure basketball perspective, it would have been awesome to have what were clearly the 3 best teams in the country, all outright power conference champions, all make it to the Final Four. As it is, we lose Houston, but we do gain a real story that people have latched onto. This NC State team that's won 9 straight games after losing 4 straight to close the regular season, has won 9 straight games, 7 of which they were underdogs in, has won 9 straight games to get to this point, while understanding that if they'd have lost at any point, any of the 9, their season would have been over at that point. And then obviously the DJ Burns story is phenomenal, and we'll get more into him a little bit later on. But like I told you last night when we were doing the Eye on College Basketball podcast, shortly after those Elite Eight games were done, my mother must have texted me 3 or 4 times about DJ Burns yesterday during the game. My mother's text messages are usually, they revolve around my children or my wife or somebody else we're related to. It's rarely about a basketball player, but she loves DJ Burns just like the rest of America. And absolutely, he's going to be walking around the Phoenix area as a real college basketball star.
Yeah, you have actually now reminded me that that my mother texted me this morning. Didn't ask about DJ Burns, just wants to know what time I'm leaving for Arizona, and I neglected to get back to her. Mom, I promise I'll text you once the show is over, maybe even in the commercial break. As for the matchups, uh, I don't know if I have concern about them both being blowouts. If we got UConn versus Purdue, that's going to set up a dynamite all-time, title game situation there. But we do get, and that could be Klingon versus Edey, and that would be amazing, a big man. But we've got DJ Burns versus Zach Edey, and that matchup, the CBS Sports graphic is my lock screen on my phone for the next 6 days because I can't wait for it. Yeah, there's obviously the potential that UConn's going to blow out Alabama like it's blown out everyone else, and UConn is the only team ever to go 10 straight NCAA tournament games on the men's side by winning by at least 13 points. I mean, it's got the 4th greatest point differential in this tournament of any team heading into a Final Four since we expanded in '85, and there's something to be said for its dominance and why that might show up again. And Purdue has been on balance so much of a better team than NC State, but NC State comes in with some true momentum and some feeling like, we've been able to take down a really good Marquette team. We've been able to take down a really good Duke team. And now they face a Purdue squad that has the best player in the sport, but Final Four stage, anything's possible. It's very much on the table because of the point spreads in this game that these could be 2 blowouts. And maybe we do get 2 stinkers on Saturday. I don't know. Usually we're afforded at least one close one. How likely do you think, and give me your thoughts on the fact that we've got 4 interesting storylines, but there's a possibility we might get 2 kind of ordinary games?
Well, I'm tired of trying to figure out, frankly, ways that somebody can keep it close against UConn. Like, I'm done with that. Like, I've been doing it for a few weeks. Like, if Terrence Shannon continues to play at this level, and then it's UConn on a 30-0 run, and they just blow out Illinois, and Terrence Shannon was terrible. So I'm assuming UConn's going to do what it does, which is to blow out everybody. But like you mentioned, it's a 40-minute basketball game, and I suppose anything is possible. But it is true that UConn 11.5 point number is the 2nd biggest point spread we've had in a Final Four game in the past 20 years. And with Purdue also being a 9.5 point favorite in Saturday's national semifinal, this is the first time in the past 60 years that both national semifinals have had point spreads put on them of 9 or more points. And so what that suggests is that we're not going to be watching a couple of games come down to the final minute. As always, we'll see, but the point spread suggests that Purdue and UConn should win comfortably. And again, that might make Saturday less interesting than it otherwise could be or would be. But the payoff thing comes Monday night when you get, I think, the championship game. Most people, just neutral observers, if you're trying to pit the best against the best, and this sport doesn't always do that. In fact, it infrequently does it. But if we're trying to put the best against the best on Monday night, well, then UConn Purdue would certainly be that. And the mere fact that these point spreads are so big suggests that not only are we possibly headed that direction, it is probably where we're going.
Yeah, and we're going to talk even more about those matchups, and we're going to predict that stuff, and we'll do that later in the show. But before our first break here, I will just say that a few things I can't help but notice on a surface level. The stories are with UConn, with DJ Burns and NC State, and with Matt Painter, Zach Edey, Purdue Redemptive. Alabama is in its first Final Four ever in men's basketball, and it's the 4th thing here. It'll start to get more attention, obviously, but it's interesting to see that a team that is capable of dropping 100+ points on just almost anyone has become the afterthought and the immediacy of having this Final Four, because it has the least compelling storylines attached to it. So I can't help but notice that. We'll see if that changes by the time we get to Saturday or not. NC State just doing this, I continually I'm thinking about what they've done to go from losing 4 in a row to end the regular season to peeling off. Like, they have played a winner go home game 9 times in a row. and they have won every single time, and they have covered as an underdog in 7 of those 9 games. It is astounding. The further we get away from what it did on Sunday, Parrish, the more I'm looking at this as like one of the like greatest tournament stories I've ever seen. Like, I get it. They're from the ACC. They're not a Cinderella because you're a power conference team with multiple national championships. Here I am. I can't call you a Cinderella by that definition. They're a wonderful March story. They're a DJ Burns is a sexy sleeper, no doubt about it. But to see a team go from trailing to Louisville in the first half of its first game in the ACC tournament to this, I'm still in awe. I happened to talk to Joel Justice, who's an assistant at NC State, earlier on Monday morning. NC State, by the way, hosting an official visit for a player in the portal as we speak. And yeah, it's euphoria in Raleigh right now, and they're in a spot they couldn't have possibly imagined, and it's really, really cool. So I think that the NC State stuff is really resonating for me on Monday morning and into afternoon here, GP, and for Purdue, that fan for as great as Bama fans must feel at getting there for a first time, for as just geeked up as UConn fans are in this state where I'm talking to you right now, and where you are as well. Oh, by the way, you're also my state still. They are just so eager about this back-to-back possibility, and the NC State stuff and all that comes with that. The Purdue one is catharsis. This is, you have been able to wash away not all but some of what happened a year ago, and for Matt Painter to get that program to the Final Four for the first time in 44 years with Zach Edey as an inevitable 2-time National Player of the Year winner. He's going to win a litany of those awards by the end of the week here. I'm so satisfied with the quartet we got, even if both games don't set up to be projected as single possession games.
When we come back, we'll go from looking ahead to looking back. How did UConn, Purdue, NC State, Alabama all get to this Final Four? They've certainly taken different paths. We'll discuss that next. The Eye on College Basketball Podcast. We're on CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to the CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball Podcast. We're on CBS Sports Network. We've already looked ahead to this weekend's Final Four. Now let's talk about how we got here. 4 Elite 8 games, interesting each one in different ways. Let's start with UConn over Illinois, Norlander. 30-0 run by the Huskies turns a competitive game into a blowout. Did you ever think, and you were inside TD Garden to witness this, you'd see a 30-0 run in the Elite 8? You don't see those in any basketball games frequently. In the Elite 8, wildly, wildly unlikely.
Wildly unlikely, and heretofore we have not received any indication there has ever been a 30-0 run period in the history of the tournament. Certainly not in the Elite 8. This will be the kind of stat, whether UConn wins the national championship or doesn't. It is a nice round number. It is an obscene number. The fact that you could go 30 consecutive points without the opposition getting one on the board is fantasy land stuff, and will be the statistic, the event that is most, unless they go on, unless they outscore Alabama 35-0 in the national semis, or do something to NC State or Purdue in the title game that beats it. 30-0, I think, is going to be the thing that is most associated with UConn in this tournament, because it's not repeatable. Like, you and I will be here, we'll live and die, and I don't think we're ever going to see something like this again. It was wild to watch. Yeah, I'm sorry to break the news, but here's the good news. I think you could live another 100 years and you're not going to see this again. 30-0 run in the Elite 8 or later in the tournament. GP, we're not getting that. To be there in the building when that was happening after, a jagged first half, when Illinois was able to, be tied 23-23, and then you look up and 45 minutes later in real time, it's 53-23. And it wasn't as though, like, it was just, it came in waves, and the dazzling sequence was the Klingon block, the one-handed meet you at the top and just snatch it away on Quincy Guerrier, and then on the other end of the floor on the subsequent play, Klingon finished it off with a dunk, which prompted one of what felt like 4 Brad Underwood timeouts in a 10-minute span in real time. Super, super impressive. Terrence Shannon Jr. shrunk in the moment, didn't have it whatsoever. 8 points, 2 of 11 shooting from the field. His college career ends with a dud. Marcus Damask at 17, he was the only Illinois player in double figures. Meantime, Klingon, I thought, had the most impactful game of his career. They only gave him 5 blocks, and I say only because everyone on Media Row was like, it's only 5? Like, it's got to be at least 6 or whatever. I asked Klingon after. He told me he thought he counted 7. But yeah, he finished with 22 points, 10 boards, officially 5 swats, and oh yeah, 3 steals, just putting up obscene numbers. And here's the thing about UConn. They still, like, this was a domination. I'm telling you, having watched this team every tournament game in person so far, and even going back to the Big East, they have not played their best game. I know it sounds outrageous, but I'm telling you, they have not. Tristan Newton only had 5 points in this game. UConn shot 3 of 17 from 3-point range and won a laugher going away against Illinois. Super duper impressive. What are your takeaways about what went down Saturday night in Boston?
Well, if they ain't played their best game, this thing's over with. If they got one better,
they have not. I'm just telling you, they haven't.
If they've got one better than they turned in over the weekend, then this thing is over with. 30-0 run against Stetson would be amazing, but it came against the Big Ten tournament champion, a top 10 team at KenPom, the number 2 offense in America. Think about that for a second. Like, the best offense in America is UConn's. The second best is Illinois heading into that game. And they went on a 30-0 run against that team. Just absolutely overwhelming. As you mentioned, unprecedented. UConn is just as great as everybody says. Meantime, Alabama beat Clemson in the Elite Eight thanks to a 16 of 36 performance from 3-point range. We have always said Alabama is flawed but dangerous because of its commitment to the 3-point shot and its ability to make a bunch of them. Against Clemson, that's what they did. 16 of 36 from 3, 44.4%. I don't care who you're playing, except maybe UConn, of course. If you're going to go 16 makes and shoot 44% from 3, you're probably not going to lose.
Yeah, it is possible, though, that Alabama could go 16 of 44 from 3-point range against UConn and still lose. So let's just keep that on the board there. Nate Oates got asked, or he got to talking in the postgame press conference about, how they evaluate the way they scout and do all this stuff. I actually wrote a feature with our buddy Kyle Boone a couple years back for CBS Sports. There's a company called HGI that, lends its services out to dozens of college programs at this point. But at the time, Bama was only one of 7 or 8 schools in men's D1 that was using them. And it's like next level data. The coaches, the coaching staffs, they get them within minutes. Like I went to the Duke Arkansas game earlier this season, and I was sitting there in the post game with the Arkansas coaching staff as they were waiting for Eric Musselman to come back in. And the assistants were already pouring through their emails, looking at these next level advanced statistics about what had just happened in the Duke game and looking over like what it showed, where they were successful. And it's a really impressive service that helps staffs basically because they outsource it because you can't, unless you were to employ a multi-man analytics department in your program, you can't really do this. And Oates was crediting them for helping reinforce this idea that it's not just layups, 3-pointers, and no mid-range shots. It's about getting the best shots possible and the most efficient shots possible. And against Clemson, it came up huge. They shot well from 3. They finished at 1.25 points per possession, which is good because Clemson was 1.15. And that's a good, you'll take 1.15 points per possession blindly almost any time non-UConn division you're playing an NCAA tournament opponent, but it just wasn't enough. So Bama breaks on through to its first Final Four, and it does so with a suboptimal defense. Right now at KenPom, Alabama is the 104th best defense adjusted per possession in the country. Now it's the number 3 offense, but it's gonna present an issue there, and I think Alabama's defensive issues are going to be probably the dominant talking point in that matchup as we head into Saturday evening, GP. But impressive for Nate Oates to do this. He's gone from former high school coach, took Buffalo to the tournament, famously beat Arizona, like 6 years. Has it really been 6 years since that happened? I think it has. And then he got the job at Bama. That was a little surprising when he got it. And now he has turned this program into among the best in the country. Not just, getting to a Final Four here, was a number 1 overall seed a year ago, knocked out in the Sweet 16, was a number 2 seed of the year in the bubble. And he has coached Alabama to 25 or more wins minimally in 3 of the past 4 seasons.
He's been awesome. Multiple SEC titles in there as well. He's one of the best basketball coaches in the country. And I love that the style was rewarded here. There's some people who are still slow to come around on this, and they insist that you can't win a national championship shooting threes that regularly, while I guess forgetting that Villanova did it a few years ago. Like, yes, you can do it. It's already been done. I like that the style of play was rewarded. Alabama will have a puncher's chance. My fear is pretty much in line with yours for them. Like, how are they going to slow UConn down? Like, I don't doubt Alabama can score. I'm not certain they will, but I understand that theoretically they could score. But how are they going to stop UConn from scoring? Like, they might need 120 to win the game, and that's an exaggeration, but maybe not. As always, we'll see. Purdue over Tennessee in the Elite Eight, thanks to 40 points, 16 rebounds from Zach Edey. I know some not very smart people love to tweet and say that Zach Edey is only good because he's tall, but there's a lot of tall people in this world, and the only one who has ever put up 40 and 16 in an NCAA tournament game in the past 30 years, his name is Zach Edey. So he's more than just tall, right? He's awesome.
Yeah, he's more than tall. In fact, let me go ISO here. Everyone spread out. Here's what Zach Edey's done. First player to have 40 points and 15 boards in a tournament game since Bo Kimball in 90. First player with 40 points without a three made, by the way, since Danny Manning did it in 87. He's the first player with at least 13 made field goals, 13 free throws, and 13 boards in a tournament game since Bill Bradley in the mid-60s. Oh, I've got more. He's the first player to average 30 points and 15 rebounds through 4 tournament games since Elvin Hayes. And the only other 2 guys that did it, aside from Edey and Hayes, are Wilt Chamberlain and Jerry West. What? He's the first player to lead Division I men's basketball in scoring and make the Final Four in the same year since Oscar Robertson in 1960, Gary Parrish. Zach Edey is the first player with multiple 30-15 games in a tournament since Cedric Maxwell did it in 1977. And he's the first player with 5 consecutive 2010 games in NCAA tournament play since David Robinson did it with the Naval Academy back in the late 80s. Oh, yeah, and by the way, he has more than 900 points and 450 rebounds this season. No player has done that in men's Division I basketball since a guy called Larry Bird in 1978-79. Hello.
He also said the F word live on CBS. And as far as I know, did not get in trouble. So I think that frees us up. If you got anything you want to say, this is your opportunity.
Oh, you and I both know if anyone is at risk for dropping that on a pod, is between us two, it is not me. So the floor is all yours.
I'm going to zip my lips. NC State over Duke in the Elite Eight, thanks to a rare 29-point effort from DJ Burns. We're going to get to DJ Burns in the next segment because a lot of people have questions. Where did this guy come from? But just broadly speaking, can you make sense of NC State getting here under these circumstances? I know you love to every November, December, January, February point out accurately that the best 4 teams are not making it to the Final Four. We're going to get some weird stuff somewhere. My counter to that has always been, sure, but my God, how are you supposed to figure out where the madness is going to happen? It'd be like if somebody said, hey, there's going to be a terrible thunderstorm somewhere in this state later today, but we can't tell you where it is, and you can't look at a weather radar. You just kind of got to guess. But it's coming. Just take a guess. That's kind of what you have to do with the bracket. My point being, I don't think anybody could have guessed NC State into the Final Four and then made a convincing argument to support it.
No, but thank God that our weather forecasting data has advanced to the point where it is more it's more predictable than an NC State Final Four run.
No question.
We've got the graphic. Shouts to our producer, Ryan. Cinderella. It's not a Cinderella run. I would think you agree with me, Parrish. You cannot claim multiple national championships and come from a power conference and claim to be of Cinderella status, right? This is a hard line thing for me. I will not budge.
I think Cinderellas have to be your George Masons, your VCUs, your Loyola Chicagos, your Sister Jeans. And what we would call NC State is just as unlikely on some level as any of those Cinderellas. But this is a big brand in a big league, a massive university. There's something short of Cinderella. They're just as unlikely to be here as your typical Cinderella, but there's still something different than a Cinderella.
Yeah, it's a charmed run. We can come up with a different phrase, but I'm getting in early on this because we're trying to push back on this before we get to Saturday. It is, though, by the way, NC State's first Final Four since 1983. I hear you, yes. That's right. There we go. That's John. Well, thank you, John. I appreciate that. And
well, we just lost all our Swifties. I hope you're happy.
We do. I think we're gonna be okay. Here's Evan Miyakawa, friend of the pod. He put this out earlier in the day on Monday. NC State has won 9 consecutive elimination games using pre-game win probabilities. The chances of it were 0.0097%, or 10,314 to 1. 10,314 to 1 for NC State to have defeated Louisville, then Syracuse, then Duke, then Virginia, and then UNC in the ACC tournament. Oh, by the way, that Virginia game had the outrageous, sequence where you had Isaac McNeely not making a foul shot, being above 80% as a foul shooter. Virginia opts not to foul on a scatter play to end regulation, and then O'Connell hits the banked in three from the wing to get it to overtime. So they had those 5 games, and then you had Texas Tech, Oakland, Marquette, and Duke. 9 in a row. The lowest percentage across this that NC State going in had to win a game was 14% before Duke in the ACC tournament. The best was the Louisville game, 82% pregame, and yet that's the one where they were trailing at the half. The fact that it's hard to explain, borderline impossible to explain, only adds to the magic here. Credit to NC State and its fan base on getting something that just is such a reward for this, and men's and women's, by the way. Now the women seeded much better, but what we have here is the 14th instance, I believe. It's the 14th instance where we've had men's and women's teams go to the Final Four in the same season, with one of them being a double-digit seed. The last time we had that was Syracuse in 2016. The men's team was a 10 seed. Awesome, awesome stuff in Raleigh. Shouts to Chip Patterson. Shouts to Will Brinson. Shouts to the Wolfpack for giving us an awesome story in Phoenix.
When we come back, UConn is obviously the favorite at this Final Four. Zach Edey is the best player at this Final Four. Alabama's probably the biggest college brand at this Final Four, but DJ Burns has emerged as the lovable face of the Final Four. Who is he? Where did he come from? How is this happening? We'll discuss that next on the Eye on College Basketball Podcast, CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. We're on CBS Sports Network. I'm Gary Parrish, joined by Matt Norlander. And Norlander, DJ Burns is a fifth-year player who started his college career at Winthrop, or technically even Tennessee before that, ends up transferring to NC State, where he spent the past 2 years playing for a program that has finished 6th and 10th in the ACC since his arrival. Now he's the face of the Final Four. How did this happen?
Yep. Well, a few factors. One, NC State made the Final Four, so
that'll do it. That'll do it.
And that'll do it. You can't be the face of the Final Four if you're not at the Final Four. People don't talk about that enough. Okay.
Oh! Hey, don't speak too soon. Wait, let's see what happens with Caitlin Clark later on tonight.
You know what? That's a valid point on that for sure. And what a huge game we've got coming on the women's side. So there's been a few things that have actually led to this moment. One of them being, DJ Burns didn't even start in a game at Syracuse that NC State lost back in the regular season. And in talking with Joel Justice, the NC State assistant, he did actually genuinely, like, he's a fun-loving guy. He's talking trash to Duke fans, like at the end of the game on Sunday, saying it's over, like you're going home, like it's done. I love that stuff. To see just someone step into the role and shine. But behind the scenes, like, he did actually make adjustments to his game, and he hasn't been like it's been a star turn genuinely, like, because he's a bigger guy who's light on his feet, is a really good passer, and has been able to take advantage of the opportunities provided to him with matchups and et cetera in the past couple of weeks here. And what do you want me to say? He's someone who is easy when you watch him play. He's easy to watch, easy to love, and has not shied away from anything. I mean, even Ian Eagle's call on Sunday, it's banger after banger for DJ Burns. Absolutely. I mean, it's incredible to see what he's done, and I mean this sincerely. Like, I'm excited by it, but it's also true. Like, he has transcended the tournament. There are people that only watch the tournament that could not have told you who DJ Burns was, or might not have even known that NC State is in Raleigh, but they know him now, and he is someone that is going to bring more eyeballs to the tournament, to the Final Four on Saturday night, because now he has this unbelievable matchup with, oh, by the way, the best player in the sport in Zach Edey.
Oh, I'll take it a step further. There are people who so infrequently watch college basketball that they might not have known who Zach Edey was a week ago, but now they know who DJ Burns is because he's just like he's busted through any ceiling that college basketball might place on a person's celebrity. He is now a thing in the United States, and it really is wild because as you and I were talking last night, like we do the Eye on College Basketball podcast 12 months a year, at least twice a week during the off season, at least 3 times a week during the season. And I don't think we talked about DJ Burns at all. I don't know that we've ever talked about him. He was a borderline top 200 recruit coming out of high school, Rock Hill, South Carolina. By the way, if you care, he was 6'9", 248 in high school. Now he's listed 6'9", 275. He ends up going to Winthrop. After redshirting at Tennessee, spends 3 years there, and the past 2 years have been at NC State. But this season still, like, you can't overstate how crazy this is. Like, sometimes you'll get like a Max Asmus in the NCAA tournament, and he goes out and gets 25, and you're like, well, I guess the little guy could go out and do this. He's been doing it all year. I didn't know if he could do it at this level, but here we are. Steph Curry at Davidson is a great example of that. Before we really latched on to this is a uniquely special talent, it was like he just bombed everybody in the NCAA tournament. But then you look back at his freshman season or sophomore season, you can kind of see, oh, he kind of does do this. DJ Burns doesn't do this. He averaged 13 points and 4 rebounds on the season. And those numbers are now up based off what he's been doing since the start of the ACC tournament. He only scored more than 20 points in the regular season one time. One time. He gets 29 points in an Elite Eight game against Duke. He gets 24 points 2 games earlier against Marquette. He is just like NC State is on a run that nobody could have reasonably saw coming. So is DJ Burns. And obviously those two things are connected.
He's been tremendous, and his play in Marquette, his distribution was incredible. And no, it's we'll see if it can continue. I'm not going to doubt the man, that's for sure. The other DJ Horn is NC State's leading scorer, and he's been pivotal in his own right. But this is power of the tournament, and he is a March Madness legend. This is the kind of thing that we will remember for decades, whether or not NC State gets to a title game or gets dropped by Purdue by 20 points on Saturday night. No, he's been awesome, and I can't wait for the DJ Burns press tour to continue. Because last thing, and then we can move on, GP. He's got a genuine joy about him and a ton of humility. And I just love the stuff I saw coming out of that arena, pregame, postgame, where, you know, he's walking through and he's finding the people that work in the arena, you know, the security guards, the people that might be in catering, the people that are working out near the floor, and he's taking photos with them. He's become this American icon and celebrity, and he's basking it entirely. DJ Burns, I hope you catapult this with NIL to the absolute maximum of your potential, man, because you deserve it. And NC State, keep riding the wave.
He is unlikely to have an NBA future, but now there are like serious football people who are watching him and thinking he could have an NFL future at 6'9", 275, the way he is able to move his feet and move his arms. And, you know, I can just remember, I guess it was November 2016. I was at a VCU practice. Shaka Smart was still the coach there at the time. And it was early in the season. So there were like, you know, some NBA scouts and executives in the building. But there was also, I'll never forget this, a scout, a front office member from the Washington, what we now know as the Washington Commanders, and he was at this practice. And I said, why? I asked somebody on VCU staff, why is he here? And they said to watch Mo Alley Cox play basketball because they think he might be able to play football, even though he had not played football since his freshman year of high school. And Mo Alley Cox has now played 6 years in the NFL for the Indianapolis Colts. So what some people saw in Mo Alley Cox as a basketball player at VCU, folks are now starting to see in DJ Burns as a basketball player at NC State. So there's at least a chance this guy's going to be in our world, very visible for a while, even long after this NCAA tournament is over. But he has obviously been an amazing story, and I can't wait to see where it goes next. Moving on, I assume we both think we're headed towards UConn and Purdue in the championship game. But let's play. What if there's an upset on Saturday? Who's more likely to pull it, NC State or Alabama? We'll discuss that next on the Eye on College Basketball Podcast, CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. We're on CBS Sports Network, and I don't mean to speak for Matt Norlander. I never would, but I'm assuming we both believe we're headed toward a Monday night championship game between UConn and Purdue. Both the Huskies and Boilermakers are heavy favorites in the national semifinals. But what if we're not headed that direction? What if Alabama or NC State could actually pull off an upset? If it were to happen, and I know you're not predicting it, but if it were to happen, where could you most likely see it?
Doesn't this have everything to do with the team on the other side of the matchup and not the team that we're trying to predict to pull the upset? And if that's the case, then the answer has to be NC State beating Purdue, because I know that you recently just got your train into this station, but I have been on this since before the Big East tournament. I am not picking UConn to lose. I'm not picking UConn to be in a close game until I see anyone. Rick Pitino was the only one that's been able to keep this close in the past month or so. Okay. And they lost a race to 90. They lost by 5 in the Big East tournament. So my pick will be NC State because of the DJ Burns factor, because of the magic there, because it's a Final Four stage, and NC State's got a charm to them. It's not really about Alabama. Alabama's rates better. It's easily the better team than NC State, but Alabama's the one that has to go and play UConn on Saturday. NC State doesn't have to do that, and so because of that, NC State is my pick to be the more likely upset of the two. And I guess as we speak here, I don't have the numbers in front of me, Parrish. I guess the projected odds makers would agree with me on that. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. UConn is an 11.5-point favorite over Alabama. Purdue only, and I put only in quotes, but a 9.5-point favorite over NC State. So Purdue is a smaller favorite over an 11 seed than UConn is over a 4 seed. That's why UConn is minus 190 right now to win this national championship. Purdue is second at plus 195, and then there's a big gap. Alabama plus 1,600, NC State plus 1,800. I think the answer has to be NC State. If the question is which of these teams is more likely to pull off an upset, if only because we haven't seen anybody really be competitive consistently with UConn all season. We haven't seen anybody be competitive with UConn lately. And so it's just hard to imagine a defense like Alabama's defense being competitive with UConn, because even if they go out and I would almost in any other set of circumstances just blindly say if a college basketball team goes 16 of 36 from 3, they will win that game, period. And yet I don't know if it's true. Alabama, UConn. I think Alabama could go 16 of 36 from 3 and still lose, because I don't know if they're going to be able to stop UConn from scoring. It doesn't matter how much you score if you cannot stop the other team from scoring. And I think that's going to be a real struggle. Whereas, yes, I think Purdue is going to control NC State. I can at least imagine Purdue ending up in a game with a team on a 9-game winning streak that has already eliminated or beaten in this stretch North Carolina, Marquette, Duke twice. It's easier for me to wrap my head around that team being competitive Saturday with Purdue than it is for me to wrap my head around a team that ranks outside of the top 100 in adjusted defensive efficiency against the number 1 offense in America that is also a top 5 defense in America. That one's just a little harder to see.
I will note that NC State's an 11 seed, and the 5 previous 11 seeds to get to the Final Four all lost. LSU in 86, Mason 06, VCU 11, Loyola Chicago 18, and UCLA 21. We'll see if NC State can actually snap that. If you watched on CBS Sports Network, you saw the graphic earlier, but for our audio audience that's listening to this in the feed after the fact, UConn, if you even go back to last year's tournament, but I'll give you this year's data as well, it's outscoring opponents right now by 23.1 points on average since the start of last year's tournament. That's right now the record over a 2-year span. It's basically competing with the wooden team that had Lou Alcindor for the greatest margin of victory, and they're playing more games than UCLA had to. In this tournament alone, UConn's margin of victory is 27.8. It's insane. Because of that, NC State's got to be the answer.
One more segment to go. When we come back, we'll actually pick the national semifinals, not just winners, but with scores as well. You're watching the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. We're on CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast on CBS Sports Network. I'm Gary Parrish. That's Matt Norlander. We got national semifinals on Saturday. Might as well pick them. We're going to start with Purdue, NC State, where Purdue is a 9.5-point favorite. What you got, Deadleg?
I got Purdue. Here's what I want. What I want is at least one compelling game that is in doubt with under 2 minutes to go. In doubt means at least a 6-point margin, at least, or at most, I should say at most. But I will go Purdue in this spot. I'm going to give you a score. I'll go Purdue 75, NC State 70. I'm going to toss you real quick. I want your score and Zach Edey over under total points and rebounds. He's just a shade under 46.5 combined points and rebounds through 4 games in this tournament, GP. So over under Edey points and rebounds, 46.5. In this spot, I'm going to go under.
I would go under. I mean, that's massive. But but he's playing a lot of minutes. You know, that's gone up in the NCAA tournament as it should. Longer timeouts, games are, higher stakes. So he'll be on the court enough to do something like that. And he might do it. He's been amazing, but I'd take the under on that. That's a lot. That's a lot of box score stuffing. I'd take the under, but I won't be surprised if he eclipses it. Purdue 79, NC State 68. I think this is where the beautiful NC State / DJ Burns story comes to an end. I've got Purdue winning by double digits, and then we'll get the nightcap. Very glad UConn got put in the nightcap, or else Dan Hurley would have been very upset about having to be on the undercard as the reigning national champion. So UConn's in the nightcap. It's UConn, Alabama. Give me your winner. Give me your score.
Yeah, listen, where's Hurley going to turn to for motivation? I don't know. He's got the nightcap, the primetime situation here, and obviously the entire world is behind UConn at this point. How can you not be? I'm curious to see what they try and do to stop Donovan Clingan, because you got Grant Nelson at 6'11", who does not match up with Clingan at all. Nick Pringles, 6'10" guy. They've got Muhammad Wagi, who can come off the bench, and he's got a little more bulk to him, but there's no one that's a matchup there, frankly. I don't know. We'll see. And then I would think you'll have Stephon Castle. I would think Castle can actually maybe guard Nelson or Sears. It's fascinating from a defensive standpoint. I'm going to stick with what I've said, though. I'm not taking anyone to beat UConn or even keep it close until I see it happen. So with that in mind, GP, I will take UConn to win. I'll take I'll go UConn 92, Alabama 78.
I got UConn 87, Alabama 75. I have UConn also winning by double digits on Saturday. What I said when it was Alabama, North Carolina is that Alabama is the inferior team, probably should lose, but their commitment to shooting threes and the ability to make a bunch of them gives them a chance. And in theory, I guess that's still true on some level. It just feels so less true against a team like UConn, because UConn is the number 1 offense in the country and Alabama's outside of the top 100 in defense. So UConn is going to be able to score. UConn's going to score. And even if Alabama is scoring, I don't know that Alabama's going to be able to stop UConn from scoring enough. I think UConn blows them out, or UConn wins a close game in the 90s or maybe even the hundreds, but it's just hard to imagine Alabama winning the game. I think we got 2 double-digit victories on Saturday. Purdue, UConn for the title on Monday. We'll see. Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Terry Teagle, Huck Larnell. Thank you guys for watching the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. We'll be back Thursday afternoon, live from Arizona. See you then.